When I was 16, I graduated high school early and moved away. My peers at school saw me as a privileged white girl who was just aiming for fame when I graduated early and proved that I was better than them. Little did they know, that was as far from the truth as it could be. At the age of 15, I had become suicidal. And at the age of 13, I was highly depressed. Later in the year, my dad would point a gun at my mother and I, screaming how I was just like my mother and was doing nothing with my life. They didn't know that during my middle school years, my mother and father both experienced traumatic changes to their brain and bodies. My mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she began showing extreme signs of borderline personality disorder. My father nearly died in an accident at work from drinking and driving over a 500-foot cliff. Both my parents began taking their pain medicine with alcohol and spent the majority of the money my dad made on alcohol, marijuana, and pills. This caused my parents to get stuck at home and led my parents to send me out to the food banks and shelters for my younger brother and them. My parents already despised each other, and the anger that they had for each other only began to get worse. When I was 13, I was put into a nearby charter school because of my depression. As my dad's anger grew, so did the abuse that I received. After my dad pointed the gun at my mother and I, my mother began blaming me for my dad's anger, which caused her to neglect me and physically abuse me. This abuse began to grow quickly, which caused my anger and depression to go rapidly through my young teen years. Every day I stayed after school as late as I could, in fear of going home and of what sort of abuse I would experience next. Sometimes if I didn't come home right after school, my mother would call the police claiming I was a runaway and needed to be taken home immediately. My mother and father were both suicidal, and they ignored the fact that I was awfully depressed. I wasn't eating, and I became an extremely angry child. I remember the day my teacher called both me and my mother into her office and told me she was proud of me and amazed by all the work I had been doing in such a short amount of time. My mother sat there and nodded with her fake smile and lied to my teacher, saying that her and my dad were both so proud of me and they were pushing me to do well in school. My teacher nodded and continued with, "At this pace, Kaityln could graduate from high school next year." I was only 15, and when I heard those words, all I could hear was, "Kaityln, next year you're done with school, and you're free to do whatever you want." When my mother heard my teacher say that, her fake smile disappeared. She slammed her hands on my teacher's desk and yelled, "No, you cannot let that happen. She is so young and does nothing with her life. She will use me for my house and food and never leave." My teacher's expression moved from excitement to fear as she glanced at me. My mother turned and glared, grabbed my arm, and immediately took me back home to tell my father the news. So, when I graduated at the age of 16, it wasn't because I thought that I was better than them and that I was aiming for fame. I was really motivated by my fear and abuse. The abuse pushed me to find happiness, explore the world, meet new people, and create my own life with people who love and care for me, and never abuse me in any way.